What's up, boys? Pigs are back for another episode of the Blind Pig Podcast, courtesy of bgobsession.com. Before we get rolling, we'll go through some particulars. Obviously, if you've been here before, thanks for coming back. We enjoy having you here. If you've just stumbled upon us, however you figured out that, we're available on all major audio platforms as well as YouTube. On the socials, you can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I think at one point, and of course at our website, bgobsession.com. We're kind of a relaxed atmosphere, four guys talking football, so pour yourself a drink and join in the conversation.
And we are as excited as hell tonight.
Absolutely. John is recovering from his deathbed to join us tonight.
I have the man cold from hell, man, and I've had like a collapsed lung. I've had all kinds of surgeries. I would rather have any of those than this cold. I took a COVID test like 3 times already. I'm like, ugh. But anyway, I'll survive. I know you feel my pain.
Yep. So, boys, looking back at our notes from last week with the predictions, Bob, Tony, John, and Mark all had us winning. The largest winning margin of victory was John, 35-24 with an 11-point victory, right? Myself and Paul actually had us falling to the Cardinals. And if you added up the two scores that we would have scored between myself and Paul, we still would not have hit 42 points. Actually, 47. Close. Sorry. So, boys, 42-14. Absolute drubbing of the Arizona Cardinals. I will take all the credit because I had Kyler Murray in my fantasy league, and he was my starter. I had Jordan Love on the bench, so you're welcome for that. But anyways, guys, that was freaking awesome.
Yeah, it was.
You know, I think we have a chat every game day, and we've had some great chat participation this year. And it's kind of funny to be in the chat room because we are so traumatized as fans, and I mean rightfully so. But we are traumatized because, like, I remember just like the week before when the opponent came out and went right down the field and torched us for a touchdown, opening drive touchdown. Same thing, man. It's like game over. We're horrible. This defense sucks. I mean, I believe there were even some calls for coaching fires or coordinator fires.
In the chat, someone said it's time for Witt to hand play calling over to Dan Quinn.
And Derek and I were texting each other going, Jesus, just shut up. We love our fellow fans, but it's like, man, can we give it more than like 3.5 minutes before we pack it in and give up? And of course, we saw 2 weeks in a row, we saw that, you know what? This team answered right back. I don't know how many years. I know we have lots of records and record-breaking statistics to talk about tonight, but I want to know how many years has it been or decades has it been since we had 2 games where we immediately got scored on and answered with our own touchdown. That is like so un-Washington-like. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, we're going to be fine, man. We're in this game and we're going to fight the whole way. But
yeah, I notably, I think I messaged you at one point and said, dude, I got to get out of chat. It's going nuts. I just couldn't do it. But I have to say hats off to the defense. I didn't even expect them to turn around that well. And we can dig a little deeper into the game itself. But there was the first drive that they went right down the field, and the response, business as usual. How many times in years past has the team collapsed? How many times? And beyond that, Jaden Daniels did the unthinkable and threw his first career interception in his 4th career game. It's ridiculous that, he threw it so early in his career. But the response from the defense there is they forced a 3-and-out. And then the following drive, we got held to a punt, our first punt in 2 games. And again, they held 3-and-out. I mean, the defense just was lights out after that initial barrage. And there was a second drive where they got to 14 that you started to wonder, okay, is the dam going to break here? But nope. They responded again, and the offense was just like business as usual. Point,
Yeah,
point, point.
I love that we're starting with the defense because I know we want to talk about the offense too. But I think the thing that I'm seeing is even when they're not playing great, the defense is swarming and they're hitting, and the tackling hasn't been perfect, but it's been a lot better than what we've gotten used to over the years. But I just see a lot of aggression, a lot of gang tackling, swarming to the ball. After that initial Marvin Harrison catch or touchdown, well, he was 5 of 6 for 45 yards for the entire game, and the one touchdown, that was it. That was the highlight for Marvin Harrison. That was it. James Conner got, he's a good running back. He got his 100 yards, but so did our guy. So did B. Rob. We answered right back on our side, and we had we had McNichols running for 68, really tough yards and 2 touchdowns. Last week we were talking about how are we win without Austin Eckler? Well, guess what? We plugged the next guy, and he has
Daniels had a rushing touchdown too. 4 rushing touchdowns by our offense. And to your point, he got Connor had 106, but I would bet somewhere around 30 of those came in 30 to 40 of those came in garbage time. You know what I mean? Where they were well out of it, and they were just we were almost on the fringe of the prevent defense, where it was like, if you want the middle of the field, that's fine. We're just going to let the clock continue to run because we're up by 3 scores.
So the other thing I wanted to throw out there about the defense is we did get 4 sacks. Again, it wasn't the John Allen, Deron Payne show like we keep wanting to see. But as a unit, we got 4 sacks on a guy who's not easy to sack. Kyler Murray is not an easy guy to get on the ground. We did it 4 times. We had 3 forced fumbles. I think we only recovered 1 of those, but 3 forced fumbles, man, in one game. That's impressive. So, and that was by, let's see, the forced fumbles. Luvu had 1, Armstrong had 1, and Armstrong's played his ass off. And then Shin had 1. So I thought the defense, they may not have won the game for us, but they definitely made it possible for us to win. What do you think, Mr. Paul?
Yeah, no, the thing that I wanted to add on about the defense is that I think moving forward, the efficiency of this offense is only going to pay dividends for them. Unlike years past, it does not seem like there is going to be tons and tons and tons of pressure on this defense to be perfect. And I think that as they realize that, I think they're going to be able to settle into their roles, and the efficiency of the offense is only going to improve their game. So, while there are definite holes, nobody's denying that. While there are definite holes on the defense, I think that having that thought in the back of their heads that, the offense is going to have their backs type thing, it's only going to serve us well moving forward. So it was nice to see that element of complementary football coming into play yesterday. I thought that they did a really, really good job of doing that. Like, as was mentioned, when Daniels had that interception, the defense returned the favor, right? They got the Cardinals off the field in 3 plays and forced the 3 and out, got us the ball back. And that's what you want. They don't have to be perfect, but they need to be complementary, and they started to play that complementary role yesterday.
We did not hear one player that we've talked a lot about early in the season. We did not hear one key player on defense's name, and that was a good thing yesterday. Anyone want to take a guess who I'm referring to?
Forbes.
Emmanuel Forbes.
Actually, we did hear his name, and it was with regard to a pass breakup on the far sideline. A kid played great coverage and was in the right place at the right time. But I think that was about the only time, right?
Yeah. So normally what we're hearing is how he's getting eaten alive, and they're targeting him and they're taking advantage of him. And so I thought that was good to see. I wouldn't say it was like a great game by him, but I think by what we've seen so far, it was certainly a big improvement.
Speaking of Forbes, and I didn't catch this during the game. The announcers didn't call it out, I don't think. I was a little distracted. I was doing some other things while I was watching the game. But I don't think anybody called it out. I saw it today on Twitter. It was either Kime or Zavala posted the highlights on Twitter. All 172 pounds sopping wet or whatever, he came up in run support and wiped out the right tackle on a sweep around the end, absolutely sealed the end, and allowed Jeremy Chen to drop the running back for a loss. But that was all on Emmanuel Forbes taking out the lead blocker, and he just absolutely gave himself up. It was, and I went back and watched it. It's a thing of beauty, but boy, when you realize the mismatch in terms of size, that right tackle's almost two of him, and that's not much of an exaggeration. The guy probably goes about 330. Forbes is going, I don't know, $170, $175 these days, whatever it is. You do the math, man. That's 150, 160 pound difference right there. It was really an impressive play. And he got up and trotted back to the huddle like nothing happened. And I thought, you go, young man.
One thing I want to point out is how much different this defense looks when we have a lead. And I wonder if that is what's going to be what actually ultimately, when we look back at the end of this season, at the overall performance of the defense, because I think we can all say we've had our concerns over the first couple weeks. But when this team has a lead, and I don't mean a 1-point lead, but an actual lead, is this the type of defense that's going to be able to clamp you down and do some things? And then if we look, how many more times are we going to be in this position where we have this kind of a lead and the defense can play this way? And it might ultimately change kind of a little bit of the narrative of the defense at the end of the year.
Well, I think winning the time of possession battle, which we're consistently doing, this week we had the ball for 33 minutes and 22 seconds. The Cards had it for 26 minutes and 38 seconds. And when you're talking about like 104 degrees down on the field, that's a big difference, man. And I just think if we can keep doing that, if we can keep, well, I'll reel this off too. We had 3 drives of greater than 6 minutes, very similar to last week. 2 of those came in the second half. And then the Cardinals had no drives greater than 6 minutes. So when you're having those long ball, not always ball control, but you're having long, successful drives where we converted. I'm trying to think how many we converted. 75% of our third downs, converted the only fourth down that we attempted. When you're able to sustain drives and be aggressive like that, you're gonna wear the defense out. And so I think that was definitely a factor, man. They were gassed by the end.
So to that end, if nobody's paid attention today, since ESPN updated their stat board for the entirety of the NFL, our offense, led by a rookie, is currently 5th in the NFL in total offense, 382.3 yards per game. We're 3rd in the NFL in rushing offense. How many of us would have bet on that in the spring when they announced Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator? I know I would not have. There's no way, even with a rookie quarterback, I would not have bet on, and the offensive line problems that we've all worried about and called out and thought were issues for years now. I certainly did not expect us to have the success on the ground that we are currently having. And that directly leads to time of possession, sustaining drives. We had the ball for roughly 7 minutes more in the game yesterday than Arizona did, roughly 33 and a half to 26 and a half minutes. Man, that's a winning formula. And it takes a lot of the pressure off a young quarterback who apparently doesn't feel pressure anyway. I mean, the kid just doesn't look like anything bothers him. And if you've been watching any of the statistics to hit social media today, he's being compared with some really, really heady company. in not in today's NFL, but in NFL history.
So I want you to do something. Anyone who's listening, come over to our board. I posted the entirety of the Jaden Daniels post-game press conference in terms of just as a text file. Read through his responses to the 20 or so questions he got asked, and as you read through it, count the number of times he says "we" and "us." Almost every question he got was about Jaden Daniels. He never responds "I," "me," etc. It's always "we" and "us." I mean, and it's really something if you look at it just looking for those in those comments. So I just think he's a really unselfish kid. And the other unit, we were worried. We knew we were worried about our cornerbacks, their defensive backs coming into the season. What's the other unit that we were so hand-wringing, freaking out? What are we going to do? How are we going to win one game? Which unit am I talking about on the other side of the ball?
Oh, it's Paul's favorite unit, so we'll let Paul tell everybody.
Tell us about it, Paul.
I'm fairly certain that you're going to be talking about the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And there were a few people in the chat yesterday that were, telling me to settle down, but I was making a comment about, oh my gosh, it feels like we've time traveled back to 1991. It is incredible to see the amount of time on some of those plays that Jaden Daniels can literally just take a nap back there, wake up, and still have another 5 seconds to go find a receiver. The pockets are clean. And, we all had questions about our new hire as offensive line coach. And that was the one head scratcher in terms of, the staff that we were assembling. We were all thinking, what on earth are we doing here? But we are all, being proven wrong right now. And hopefully that continues. Granted, it's 4 games, but oh my gosh, if this doesn't remind you of some pleasant days of the past, you're kidding yourself right now.
For you guys that only listen to the podcast and have a hard time picturing an environment where somebody would tell Paul to settle down, you really need to come join the game day chats. I promise, he's a different guy right now.
The game day chat can be a little bit, it can get a little spicy in there at times. It occurred to me though, as we're everything Paul said, I agree with. And some people will say, "Oh, well, but Jaden Daniels is getting the ball out quickly." He is, but that O-line is playing really well, and it does beg the question: do we really know what the fuck we're talking about? Because we worried about it when we were. That's one thing we all agreed on coming into this season is the O-line's a disaster, and they're not addressing it. And I mean, maybe that's a factor. We just don't know what we're looking at. Who knows? But
the other thing I think that can't be overstated is the difference of how play calling and you can manipulate your offense schematically to help out your offensive line. It was, I mean, how many times in the past 10 years have we said, why do you have John Bates one-on-one against Joey Bosa and then getting mad at the offensive line because Sam Howell's back there getting his head caved in? There's a lot of things that can happen beyond just a man-to-man block or a chip or whatever that changes things. You can change I think a big part of it also, and this can't be overstated, is the fact that it's Jaden Daniels. So the tackles can't crash around the outside because Daniels is going to do what we watched Michael Vick and Donovan McNabb and so many other quarterbacks do to us, where our guy just pass rushes his way out of the play, and then there's a giant gaping hole for them to step up into the pocket. Having him creates a situation where they can't pin their ears back, and just say, I'm just going to beat the shit out of Andrew Wiley for 30 minutes and just go get sacks for days and boost my numbers. You can't do that with a guy like Jaden Daniels back there because you can't just rush. He's going to make you look stupid. So And but in schematically, I think Kingsbury's been doing a lot of good stuff to help that offense and help out that offensive line.
I feel like the Kingsbury offense is so they're doing so many different things that at least for the last 2 weeks, those defenses have been just really at a loss, like totally unsure of what we're doing and how to stop it. You know, I guess part of me wishes he would stop with the razzle dazzle stuff. You know, we had a shovel pass in there yesterday. We had a wildcat snap, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
We had some razzle dazzle, but man,
it all worked though. It worked.
Yeah, I know, it did this time.
I don't think the shovel pass was the play call, though. I think that was Jaden Daniels improving on the run.
I think you're probably right on that.
Now, the Wildcat was obviously a Kingsbury call, but you can't argue with a play that goes for a touchdown.
I think, too, man, the run with a really solid rushing attack, that just sets – you can see it if you're watching a series. You can see they're setting up. They'll run it. They'll roll Jaden out and give him the option to run. We were 4 of 5 in the red zone yesterday, 4 of 4 in goal to go situations. So I just love how aggressive they're being. And here's the thing that we've never had. Maybe we had it with Robert in little brief, glimpses, but we haven't had a quarterback in a long time who on 4th down, you were pretty confident we were going to get that 4th down yardage because they can't just stack the line. I mean, if they stack the line, I'm telling you, all you got to do is do a naked bootleg with Jaden, and he's going to get it. He cannot be stopped in that kind of a scenario, I don't think. And hell, half the time we don't need to because we'll just pound B-Rob up the gut and get it that way, the hard way. But, man.
Robinson's 10th in the league right now in rushing. He's got 66 carries for 307 yards. With a long of 40, he's got 2 big runs, 3 touchdowns, and 17 first downs.
Pinch myself, man. I can't. I don't know if you guys have that feeling, but it's kind of like I can't believe my buddy, the Jets fan, texted me today, and he's like, "Holy cow, man, you must be pretty happy." I'm like, for the moment, yes, I'm pretty happy.
So, go ahead, Derek.
Beyond that point with B-Rob, Jaden Daniels has 46 carries for 218. Eckler another 13 for 83, and then McNichols 9 for 69. We've rushed the ball 134 times in 4 games for 677 yards. We're averaging over 5 yards a carry, and that's at almost 170 per game.
You know what?
Inject that in my veins right now, like, you know what I mean? Like, if we can sustain that, that is the derivative of our ability to have a successful offense.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Daniels, but you give any quarterback in the league that running game, and they should be able to play fairly well. Now, I don't expect an 82% completion rate over 4 games to come from anybody, but apparently it is because Daniels is doing it.
Hey, McNichols yesterday, coming in relief, in addition to 2 touchdowns, averaged 8.5 yards a carry. Averaged 8.5 yards. So that's a pretty damn good day. So I just wanted to run through. I think everyone's seen like the record Bob just referenced, and there's been 3 or 4 NFL records that they covered yesterday all over social media. But I just wanted to run through a few nuggets. The last time Washington scored 38 points or more in consecutive games was 1991. It's been that long. This is the first time Washington is 3-1 since 2011. Daniels is already tied for 4th most. This blows my mind. Jaden Daniels is already tied for the 4th most rushing touchdowns in a season, Washington, with Kirk, who did it twice, Joe Theismann, and Eddie LeBaron, and it's only week 4. So you know he's going to smash that record before the season's done if he stays healthy. Bob mentioned the 82.1% completions, highest by any quarterback through 4 games since 1950. McLaurin passed Bobby Mitchell for 8th most receptions yesterday. That's a pretty impressive feat.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to give Siebert a shout out because I don't think he's missed a kick yet, right? Extra point or field goal. I think he's perfect so far.
17 of 17 total kicks.
So I'm trying to get used to this. I spent a little bit of time today bouncing around YouTube listening to some of the major national names, right? Rich Eisen, Colin Cowherd, a couple of other people. I lost track of the number of times I heard people say that Washington is at the moment the best team in the NFC East, and they're not sure they see that changing between now and the end of the season. I lost track of the number of times somebody said, if you were building a franchise, ask the question, if you were building a franchise, how many quarterbacks in this league do you take over Jaden Daniels? And there aren't a lot of names on that list. I almost put up a thread just to see, who, but I mean, and they were throwing out, yeah, okay, you may take Josh Allen, you might take Lamar Jackson. Those are the only two, and Pat Mahomes. Those three were the only gimmies that everybody could agree on quarterbacks that you would take over Jaden Daniels right now, league-wide. I lost track of the number of times I heard people ask whether the Chicago Bears have heartburn over picking Caleb Williams first. I'm not used to this. I don't know how to deal with this. It feels good, but it's the PTSD, John. I keep waiting for it to run around my ears.
we know there's a segment of the fan base, probably the smart segment, that will say, well, let's see how it looks at the end of the season. It's only 4 games. And those people are not wrong. Some of them are our dear friends. But you know what? And I just posted this on the board like half an hour ago. F that. I'm excited, man. And I am buying in, and I'm just going all the way in on Jaden Daniels, man. I really think he's the guy. And if I'm made out to be a total idiot when all the dust settles, I can live with it. But I'm just tired of being scared. No, it's going to be like Robert. It's going to be like, we said good things about Sam Howell last season, but I just don't think we've seen anybody play quarterback like this guy in a Washington uniform, maybe ever.
And to add to that, John, there's absolutely no shame in being excited, and there's absolutely no shame in embracing this and just being super happy about it. The fact of the matter is we've lived through hell for 30 years. If it ends up being where we come back down to earth, so be it. But for the time being, let us enjoy this, take it all in and just go with it, right? There's no shame in it.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point. I don't know that it's almost like everybody grieves in their own way. You know what I mean? Like, we're not grieving here, but it's similar. Like, our entire fan base, everybody's gonna experience prosperity in their own way. And John, to your point, here's where I'm at personally. I'm elated because this has always been a year of Jaden Daniels and his progression, in his development, and he just happens to be developing, it appears, faster than we had planned. So if he can jump in here and now in year 1 be playing like an NFL level quarterback, and we don't have to wait until the end of this season, now this changes the dynamic of the entire offseason. Even if he comes back to earth, the team falls off a cliff, whatever, I don't think you can take away the ability that it's not Jaden Daniels. It differs a little bit from Robert, where this is not a unique surprise the defense take them, you know what I mean? Trick them into not knowing what's going to happen. He's going out and just beating teams. The running game is going out and beating teams. The offensive line is beating teams. So we're winning heads up football at this point. It's not 2012 RPO. There's RPO in there, but that's because he's a weapon. They know it's coming and they can't stop it. the touchdown he hit against Cincinnati, where he held the ball, there was nobody within 15 yards of the guy except for one outside blocker. So they know it's coming, and he's beating them. The throw to Luke McCaffrey was an absolute dot. That John, I think, said that it looked like he wasn't sure if there weren't streamers coming off the backside of that football when he was on that crossing pattern. That is not a gimmick. That is a guy. That's an NFL arm, an NFL throw, an NFL decision to a wide receiver that is not running alone down the sideline against an NFL defense. So I'm beyond excited. I'm sure I'll buy in. He's ahead of where I thought he was going to be. So hell yeah.
I think one thing that you can look at when I look at a lot of stats for these pods, and I've been surprised the last 2 weeks, and we're getting ready to see it again, where a team's leading receiver, like the Browns, and I guess this is a good segue. The Browns receivers, there's not anyone on the roster that's caught 50% of the balls heading their way.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a news flash: Jaden Daniels isn't breaking NFL completion percentage records because the receivers have less than a 50% reception rate. They're catching everything just about everything thrown their way. And part of that is what you just talked about, which is that ball is a laser, and it is right where it has to be. It's not like he's throwing to wide open guys left and right. I mean, occasionally, but generally speaking, they're contested catches that are just on a dime to our receivers. So
I started to say something about it last week, and we were headed long, and so I left it in my pocket for later just in case. Turns out it was a pretty good thing to leave in my pocket. But you think about his incomplete passes. We're not talking about passes that get dropped. We're talking about passes that were uncatchable. Right? The deep ball that he missed on with McLaurin last week, that ball was 12 yards away from the receiver. That wasn't that's not on McLaurin, right? That's totally a Jaden Daniels thing. If our receivers can get their hands to the football right now, they are coming down with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I forget if it was Cowherd or Eisen said today. They were like, Jaden Daniels is lighting this thing up, but step back and take a look at the play design. Cliff Kingsbury is a year ahead of everybody else in the league right now. He is just absolutely scheming the bejesus out of this offense and getting the most out of every single player on the field, including Jaden Daniels. Now, Daniel still has to throw the ball correctly, and the receiver still has to catch the ball. But they're not wrong. You go back and look at the highlights, and guys are open by NFL standards. They're not open by college standards.
Mm-hmm.
But they are running open for the NFL. And a lot of that's got to do with the play design. Kingsbury's just doing oh my gosh, we may have the best offensive coordinator in the league right now. Actually, I think we do. I don't think that's a we may. I think we absolutely do. He learned a lot coming out of Arizona. The guy is just calling games out of his mind right now, and the players are responding.
So before we move on to the Browns, I think we would be remiss if we did not mention one thing, which has nothing to do with the team, and that is the fan presence at the last two games.
Yeah.
If you just turned your picture off yesterday and listened to the crowd, you would have thought it was a home game. There was that much intensity from the Washington fans that were there. So that is just an absolute indicator of like what the excitement level of the fan base. I can't imagine what next Sunday is going to look like and sound like. So I think it's going to be intense.
Absolutely. Before we do move on to Cleveland, I got to give a shout out. One of our brothers on the board, Diesel Power, posed a question in response saying, hey, this would be a good topic. And I know we've moved away, but I am curious in its response. Do you guys think that the defense can get better moving forward, or did we just see their ceiling? Was this the best game of the year, and they're going to regress back to what they were before? So shout out to Diesel Power. Figure we could touch on that before we move it on to Cleveland.
I personally think the defense can get better, provided that the offense continues to remain efficient. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'd agree with Paul. And the reason I think that is because we've got a number of young guys that we certainly haven't seen the best of yet, right? And I would include Mr. Forbes in that. Sinistral is playing game 4 as an NFL cornerback. And there aren't that many guys that come into this league and play like seasoned professionals. He's learning on the job every week, and he's getting just a little bit better every week. Newton, this was only his 3rd game to actually get, live fire snaps. There's been a tremendous amount of turnover on that side of the ball, and I think they're all learning how to play with each other and learning how to play downhill. John, you said at the beginning that this wasn't the Payne and Allen show that we've all been looking for. You realize between the two of them, they had a sack and a half. Those are pretty good numbers for defensive tackles not named Aaron Donald. So I'm not unhappy with that. That shows improvement to me.
I agree with that.
I don't think we've seen the best of this team yet. And I think the coaches are coaxing more out of the defense every week and maybe making that game plan a little bit more aggressive every week, predicated on what they're seeing. I don't know. I appreciate the question from DP, but I don't think this was the ceiling. I think they will get better.
I think Bob hit the nail on the head with even if he had just said, look at all the turnover, and it's not just player turnover, 60% turnover of the roster, but all new coaches on the defensive side of the ball. If you looked at one thing with this team, which is the roster turnover that we just had and all new coaching staff, and then look at what we're doing, it's pretty incredible. That's the reason we're getting all of this NFL attention, because this is not what a Washington team has looked like. And it's not even what a Washington team 4 weeks into the Dan Quinn, Adam Peters era, what anyone expected it to look like. It looks like a really good football team. So, I just think the defense can't, injuries can always play a part, but I think they're going to learn. I think they're going to learn each other more, obviously, as the season goes on. We won't have as many gaffes.
Every show I listened to today used the phrase ahead of schedule for this rebuild.
So
I can't really talk about more than what you guys already talked about. I think they can get better. They will get better. They're going to continue to gel. One thing I did notice in chat, or when we were watching, and I mentioned it in chat, I saw Newton and Mathis on the field quite a bit. That hopefully that means that the two of those guys are kind of developing to become the Bash Brother 2.0, the second line of rotation. And then if you can scale back to the point where Payne and Allen aren't having to play 90% of the snaps like they were over the last 3 years, that's something we got to that nobody's really talking about with Payne and Allen. Payne's in his 7th season in the NFL, like 7 years. Okay, like same, and Allen is in his 8th. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot there that these guys may be. Well, maybe not old as far as the terms of age that you look, but in football life and in the beating that they've been taking, that they've been the only thing that's worth blocking or doing anything with. So if we can scale them back a little bit and we can use a true rotation like Philly used to a few years back, I think there's still more room to improve on that defensive side of the ball. So, John, you're about to talk.
So we played a desperate team on Sunday, and it didn't look like they were the desperate team. We've got an even more desperate team, the Browns, that were playing at 1:00 on Sunday. And the Browns, they were 11-6 last season, had a good season, went to the playoffs, lost to the Texans in the wild card round, but they were a playoff team. So coming into Washington, like the hottest team in the league right now, arguably the hottest team, on the road at 1-3, they've got to be in desperation mode. And I would even say Kevin Stefanski may be playing for his job this season, man. I don't know much about the ownership situation of the Browns, but he's been there. This is his 5th season. and they went out in the first round last year. They're looking like they could be a non-playoff team this season if they don't turn it around. So I call that major desperation mode.
I actually wonder if this is the opposite, and I'm not gonna. This is in years past where we are the get right team, right? We're the team that people are like, all right, if we can limp into Washington, we can get right against those guys. You know, like this is the type of game that I hope the coaching staff is like, these guys are on the ropes, and we're about to hit them with the haymaker that's going to end their season. You know what I mean? Last year, yeah, they went 11. They won a lot of games, but if you look at it, Deshaun Watson did not play the entirety of the season. When he did play, he was 5-1, averaging about 61% of his passes, and through those 6 games, he had thrown for 1,100 yards. He's almost the exact completion percentage, but he's only averaging 181 yards a game this year. His leading receiver, Jerry Jeudy, has 197 yards. Amari Cooper has 148. Austin Eckler has 130 yards after the catch in our offense. So, like, I'm not trying to pile on. It's not like Terry McLaurin was essentially absent for 2 games, and he's got 191.
Well,
You know
I
mean?
wasn't talking about who's going to win the game. I was talking about they're desperate. This is a desperate team coming. So
I agree, but that's kind of my point. Is, are they desperate, or is this a boxer that's punch drunk and he's wobbling on his feet and he's just, I don't know. It's a hard. I don't know. It's tough.
Well, their only win is against the Jaguars. You know, they got blown out by Dallas, which is understandable. But they also lost to the Giants and Raiders, which that's not good. And they beat the Jaguars in a very close game. So you talked about the offense not being very good. They're better at scoring than they are in terms of yards. The defense is kind of middle of the road, a little bit better than middle of the road. They're 12th in yards given up, 17th in points given up. They have a pretty good passing defense, top 10 passing defense, 9th in passing yards, 6th against touchdowns, and then their rushing defense is not quite as good. They're 18th in yards, 22nd in touchdowns. So to me, that says the game plan should include a ton of pounding the rock, but which we tend to do anyway, right? But I think in this game, they look like they'd be pretty susceptible to running the ball versus throwing it 50 times. What do you guys think?
Their defensive ends scare me, right? Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett. I think that's the biggest part of their defense. I think that's their biggest weapons on defense. It's going to be about what can we do up the middle, because I don't think the outsides are really going to be easy.
They've got 11 sacks, and those 2 guys have 6 of those 11.
Mm-hmm.
And Garrett's going to get his. I mean, that's just.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's Myles Garrett. He's one of those guys that's consistently defensive player of the year conversation. I'm not going to say, so I think this offense is set that we can beat that as long as we don't get cute. Jaden Daniels can run away from both of those guys, but he's not going to run away from them when they get their hands on him. You know what I mean? He's going to need open field. But I think our run game can attack the interior, and as long as we continue the way, because it's not like we've been facing a bunch of chumps at defensive end this year. We've already come up against Kayvon Thibodeau, right? We came up against dude for Cincinnati, who's escaping my brain now. Jesus, now it's killing me. But we have faced a handful of edge rushers that are not chumps. So it's gonna. We'll see what Kingsbury can do there.
They're awful.
Matchup I'm looking at this weekend: Brandon Coleman on Myles Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
Young man's going to learn some lessons this weekend.
One thing that jumped out at me looking at the stats is they are god awful in the red zone. They are only 21% in the red zone, 11 of 53. I'm sorry, and on third down, 5 of 6 in the red zone. So when they get to the red zone, a total of 6 times this season, they can score, but they are only 21% on third down, and that, to me, that probably speaks to Sean Watson as much as anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then equally, they're giving up almost 31% on third down. So they're not converting. They're only converting at 21%, but then they're giving up almost a third of the time a conversion on third down.
The other thing that jumped out at me is that he's been sacked 19 times. I don't know what Jaden's sack numbers are, but I'm pretty sure they're how much?
9.
So,
well, and hold on, we know there's at least 2 cheapies where he broke the pocket and he ran out of bounds before the line of scrimmage. Yeah. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
there's a couple of those built in there too. Not to, Watson might have a couple of those also, but still,
they've had a ton of injuries too. Their injury list last week was like 17 players or something. It's crazy.
What are you thinking, Paul?
Yeah, no. So I'm listening to you guys talk, and the thing that keeps running through my head is, oh my gosh, this sounds in a lot of ways like a Ron Rivera team. Cleveland's a team that has a very, very difficult time of getting to 20 points. They've scored under 20 points in 3 of their 4 games. John mentioned the awful third down conversion rate that this team is at this year. They're at 20%. This screams to me as being the type of game where we very simply have to try and be efficient on offense and, quite simply, not beat ourselves. If we do that, this should certainly be a team that you can handle. They're a team going in the wrong direction, and just don't give them any sort of reason to believe or continue fighting. This is the type of team that you want to go out there early on in the game, early on in the first quarter, in the first half, establish yourself, get out in front of these guys, and don't give them a reason to keep fighting.
They also have Ken Dorsey as their OC, and this is his first year in Cleveland. I think he was Buffalo's OC for a couple of years prior to that. So I think that's always, although it's working out really well for us, but with Kingsbury, but I always think that can be a factor because sometimes the quarterback and the OC aren't on the same page, or the scheme, there's issues where the scheme doesn't really fit what the new team has. So that might be part of their offensive woes, could possibly, could have something to do with it.
Well, the other thing is that they're missing their bell cow in Chubb. Chubb has been cleared to return to practice. He's been moved out of injured reserve and into the window to return. So they've got 21 days. So I highly doubt we're going to see Chubb on Sunday. It would be kind of shocking to me. I mean, imagine he's probably going to practice at least a week before they consider actually activating him. But when you're leading rusher, their leading rusher right now is Jerome Ford. Is that right? I think.
Yeah, I've never heard of him. Have you guys?
Yeah,
I think he floated around with Oakland. Is that right? Or Vegas? A little bit. I'm just trying to remember. Fantasy football is the only reason that name even rings a bell to me.
I had him on my fantasy team last year. He's the guy that they played after Chubb went down last year. He helped me win the BGO Fantasy Championship.
Yeah, that's another time we're playing Watson as the second leading rusher. The 2 weeks in a row where the quarterback is the second leading rusher.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So I wonder if a lot of the struggles. I mean, they have Deontay Foreman and they have Pierre Strong, who's kind of sneaky. But they haven't played him. He's got 3 carries on the year. So you're not. They have Elijah Moore, Njoku, Jerry Jeudy, and Amari Cooper are their top wide receivers. I can say that I thought there would be more, but you wonder how much of it's also Watson. Like, is Watson? He's not what he was in Houston. I can tell you that. So, this would be a hell of a good week for us to have our first interception.
I think this
watched most of their opening game against the Cowboys, opening weekend. Watson doesn't look like the same player. That year and a half off or whatever it was that he was suspended, he's not the same guy that played in Houston. I don't know if it's the offense. I don't know if it's Watson. I don't know if it's the money. I don't know if something's in his head because of all the legal trouble. I don't know everything, but I don't know anything. But I can tell you, watching the guy on the field, he is not the same player from Houston. He's not a guy that anybody would give a $240 million guaranteed contract to.
I think this is going to be a huge coaching test because despite everything we just said for the last 10 minutes, this feels like a trap game to me. It feels like a game that we're all sitting here saying we're going to win. It shouldn't be that tough to beat Cleveland based on what we've seen so far. And, the players are human beings. They're coming off 2 big wins, feeling pretty good about themselves. So you just wonder if we're not ripe for the picking. So I'm really going to be curious to see. I know we're not going to win every game, down the stretch here. I have no idea how many more games we're going to win, but this feels like one where we could be looking past them a little bit.
And you also wonder if any of these players are potentially looking ahead to next week. Does anyone know who we play the week after Cleveland?
The Ravens.
Baltimore.
Yeah. And I mean, we're in absolutely no position to be the type of team to look past an opponent and be looking ahead on that schedule. But you see it happening all the time in the NFL, right? Big game upcoming in 2 weeks. Teams overlook their opponent and get surprised, right? We're the last team that should be doing that, though, given what we've dealt with and given our performance over the last several years. So
100%. So we're going to find out, right? We found out. I mean, I worried about that going into Arizona. Like, wow, we won that. I mean, that Cincy win had to be the biggest win in 5 seasons, at least in terms of how the fan base felt about it. I really worried, could we sustain that level of intensity and emotion, going on the road for a second week in a row. And I think they played better. I'm going to say it. I think they were better yesterday than they were against Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm sorry, against Cincinnati. But
yeah, I want to backtrack for a second because we left somebody off the kudos list. The team left Cincinnati and flew to Arizona. Josh Harris and the ownership group put this team up for the week in Arizona so that we would have a better shot at this instead of flying back to DC overnight after a Monday night game and then taking Saturday to fly to Arizona. They were there. They were adjusted. They had a good week of practice. The ownership team ponied up for everything so that the team could just relocate for a week. That is not something that many NFL teams do during the regular season. And the reason they don't do it is the expense. I've read multiple reports about it this week. It's really pretty damn rare unless you're playing internationally and then the team flies over to England the week before. Harris and the ownership team deserve a lot of credit for looking at Adams and Quinn and saying, "You want to go to Arizona for the week? Go to Arizona for the week." I think that's a big reason we did what we did in Arizona, and I think that's a big reason, John, we looked better in Arizona than we did in Cleveland the week before. And you're not wrong. I totally agree with you. I think the team looked better this game than they did the previous game.
Well, having said all that, are we ready to make some predictions on this one?
Let's rock and roll. Paul, I wrote your name down first. What's going to happen, brother?
Oh gosh, I don't like going first, but I guess I can't deny what I'm seeing. Right? It's been pretty impressive. In years past, I would totally pick us to lose this coming season against Cleveland, especially given the fact that it's at home and we typically don't play as well at home compared to how we do on the road. I just think that the atmosphere is going to be electric. I think one of the biggest factors in winning this coming weekend is going to be remaining composed. There's going to be a lot of energy in that building, in that stadium, and the players need to stay within themselves and just execute. And provided they execute, I think that Cleveland is a team that we can most definitely beat. We're riding the wave of momentum right now, and I think we're going to win it. I don't think it's going to be a whitewash or a blowout by any means. But as I mentioned earlier, if we just limit the mistakes, I think there's every reason to believe that this team can win the game. So we are not going to beat ourselves on Sunday, and I'm going to call a Washington win 24-17.
Mm-hmm. Well, I teed up myself second because usually I go last, but I figured I'd expose myself. Similar to what Paul said in years past, that this is a game I would consistently pick us to lose. I've mentioned it on here. John, you really put it well about it could be in a trap game, but how many times have we been in a position before recently that I can legitimately say that we are the team that, based on recent history, should win the game? We're the team on the up. They're the team on the down. They're coming to our house. We have better quarterback play. We have coming off of a better defensive, showing. I just have a feeling we continue to ride the wave. We end up pulling this one off. It's, again, not like Paul said, it's not a blowout. Washington 27, Cleveland Browns 21. John, you're up, brother.
Well, I'm going to make this really simple. I think we keep doing what we've been doing. I think Kingsbury's going to keep mixing it up. Lots of running, lots of passing, lots of passes that start out looking like runs, lots of runs that start out looking like passes, and keeping that defense of Cleveland off kilter. And I think the defense is going to have a couple of turnovers, like maybe two picks and maybe a forced fumble, because I think they're starting to feel it a little bit. So I'm going to say that, even though I talked about the trap game, which does worry me, I think we win at 35-16.
Whoa.
And I think we had a couple of predictions from our guys that couldn't make it tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Anyone got Mark's prediction in front of them?
I don't.
Real quick, give me 1 second.
I was going to give Bob his showing. What do you got, Bob?
Okay. I'll do it. All right. So, interesting thing that I have noticed about Cleveland this year, they're working on a straight. In 4 games, they have scored 15, 16, 17, and 18 points. Not necessarily in that order. They did 17, 18 to start the season out in the first 2 games, and then against New York posted 15, and against Las Vegas posted 16. I'm going to stick with the theme. I think Washington wins this 32-14. I haven't predicted a spread that big in I don't know how long. And I'm a little nervous.
My gosh, 18 points?
No. Oh, is that an 18-point spread? Yeah, that's an 18-point spread. Yeah, I haven't picked a spread that big in I don't know how long. But I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. I think Kingsbury just – the league doesn't have him figured out yet, and I think he's got the league figured out at the moment. Cleveland doesn't have the defense everybody thought they were going to have. They thought the defense was going to be the strength of this team, it's better than the offense, but it's not what this was the number one defense in the league last year. And for whatever reason, they're not playing that way right now. And I think this team comes into the home field and just gets blown away by how excited the fans are. But I don't think anybody loses their cool. I think Dan Quinn and Adam Peters are keeping these guys pretty feet pretty well planted firmly on the ground. So I think we take care of business. Oh, you know what? The next game's not against. Oh no, I'm looking at their schedule. Never mind. Ignore me. So 32-14, final answer.
32-14. I like it. All right. Well, we did have like John alluded to. We did have a couple write-ins from our brethren. First off, also let me just say our brother Chris will be back local here at the latter part of this week. So hopefully we can wrap him back into a podcast in the not too distant future, so he doesn't have to watch football games at 3:00 in the morning. That'll be good for him. But Tony, also known as Enforcer on the board, he predicted Washington 24, Cleveland Browns 20. And then I was able to grab Mark's. He has Washington 27, Browns 23. We are all picking a clean sweep, guys. This is kind of scary.
Yep.
I don't know that I can argue against it. I think the other thing, and just to touch on it as we did you guys see the videos? Like there was one where one of the Cleveland Browns linemen was on the ground and like Deshaun Watson went to go help him up and he literally swatted his hand away. Get away from me. Like, I don't know if that's also got something to do with it. Are they giving up on Watson? Like, because if that's the case, then there's no reason we shouldn't be able to beat these guys on Sunday and do it comfortably. But
well, I hope he goes out and gets a massage so he can relax and give us his best effort. But I'm just saying.
All right, fellas. Well, as always, it's good rapping with you guys. We should be back next week, same time. Monday night we'll record, post it Monday evening, be up for everybody on Tuesday. If you guys don't have anything else.
Fun to be a Washington fan. That's all I'm going to say.
Right. That's right.
Haven't been able to say that in a long time.
All right, boys. It's been real. I'll see you next time.